And Chance Burrows, welcome to the show, man. This is going to be such a fun one. I don't think we've ever had anyone from the military. You were a combat engineer for 8 years in the Canadian Army, and then you transitioned into podcasting. You're a very experienced podcaster. You've just had a wealth of people on your show and talked about all different types of topics. So it's going to be very insightful. I think some people are going to pick up so much from this because it's going to be a very flowing conversation. And if you could tell us, what is it that you do for people, and tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, really, when if you were to put your finger on it, what is it that you do for them, so the audience can get a bit of that.
That's a really good question. I'd say at the root of it, I'm a facilitator. This is what I do now, is I facilitate information. And even when I was in the military, this is something that I thought about quite deeply, is the fact that as an engineer, that's what we do, is facilitate movement, right? So we clear minefields, we build bridges, we construct places to sleep. Like, there's lots of things that we do, but it's all about facilitating the rest of the military to do its job. And once I got out of the military, I really wanted to serve still. I wanted to give back. I still wanted to do something that was really meaningful. So I started helping my other veterans and started becoming an advocate. And then I was one of the founders of the thing up here called the Canadian Walk for Veterans, and got that started and running, and then got into podcasting. And it was always about trying to bring either people to information or bring information to people, one or the other. And I've always tried to allow for that fluidity of that fluidity of movement in order for people to gain stuff. So with the podcast, yeah, it's we talk about what most people don't talk about. And we talked about mastery the other day, actually, which was a really neat conversation. We've talked about, I actually did a 2.5-hour one on nutrition on Friday. So like we went to town into that with two eating nutrition specialists and nutritionists, things like that. Just an absolute wonderful time. And honestly, it's a little bit self-serving because I learn so friggin' much from these podcasts that I get consistent updates and consistent things. And if there was a actual reel or something of the little outtakes of my face throughout one of the shows, it's always and like just taking stuff on board. It's so much fun. But
those are the best episodes.
Yeah, and we get them a lot. This is because we have, as we were talking about earlier, we have a little bit of a vetting. We have a vetting podcast and a podcast, but the collective itself is, man, we have so many just absolutely outstanding people. We've had 200 plus guests, like unique guests, but overall, in terms of people we've had on the show, we're just about at 800 now. 403 podcasts of the collective, 43 podcasts, the gold mine. Like, we've been going to town.
So Chance, man, from combat engineer to veteran advocate, you've had obviously a remarkable journey from serving in the military to becoming a veteran advocate. My question is, how did your time in the Canadian Armed Forces shape your perspective on resilience and discipline? And how did you apply those lessons to everyday life now?
Those are good questions. And it's actually twofold. So initially, when I was young, being in the military, it shaped the way I thought. It became very linear, A to B. And it becomes very simple to live that way because you don't really have any other responsibilities, right? Like, I wake up in the morning, you do PT with the guys, you show back up at work, you do some training, you go home at night. Like, it's pretty singular. When you start to add in family, or you start to add in groups of people or other things outside of the military, that's when everything starts to get challenging, where that linear path starts to be difficult. So throughout my time in the military, discipline was key, right? That's how you do the job. My time in Afghanistan, it was similar. You have to maintain a level of discipline that allows you to function, but survive. Because if you don't do the things you're supposed to do, people die. So the consequences are extreme. And through that discipline and through that rigid adherence to what needed to be done, that gave me an ability to work hard, right? If you need something, I'm on it, and I will smash that thing until it's done. The challenge was getting out of the military. Is once you get out, that mentality doesn't really work anymore, because I was like a bull in a china shop, right? You just, whatever's in my way, I'm going to smash it down. I'm going to hit it as hard as I can until it goes away. And unfortunately, there's only so many times you can hit your head against a wall when you're the problem and you're in the way. And it's really challenging to try to smash through yourself, if that makes any sense. But being an advocate, that gave me an outlet. That gave me a way to help people. It gave me a way to kind of focus a little bit on somebody else, so that I wasn't focusing on myself. What actually I ended up learning through that process was I was actually using other people as a kind of a stopgap measure, so that I didn't have to deal with myself. Right. So I wasn't thinking about me because I was thinking about other people. I wasn't thinking about me because I had the walk to plan, or it was a way to keep myself busy so that I didn't have to actually go inwards. And it wasn't until I stopped doing that, like doing the walk and doing all these other things, that all of the weight of everything that I needed to do really sunk in. And then I had to go on a journey. And then it was, finding the right therapist and finding the right team of people to kind of help me, doctors and so on and so forth. And then reaching out to the right people, talking to other people, like mentors and other people that I look up to, who would call me on my own BS. I'd be like, I just can't do it today. And my buddy would be like, and what if there was a gun to your son's head? And I'd be like, yeah, I'd get it done. And he's like, there's your answer. I'm like,
did you ever get to the root cause? Kind of like, what could you put your finger on what you think, or maybe you know exactly what it was, like what was holding you up? Was there something, some belief, or was it some thought process, or just habitual? And being in the army, I'm sure there's some trauma in there. It's not the normal experience. So there's a lot of things you're probably had to do that most other people don't, and that can build patterns that you're just responding off of that you might not know about. But did you ever get to the root cause of kind of what was holding you up?
100%. And it took a while, I'm talking like a decade worth of just introspective thought and work. I did get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress and major depressive disorder when I got out of the military, just based on some of the trauma and some of the stuff that happened during, like I got blown up overseas, and we got it was a rough tour. I was there for 8 months in Afghanistan. It was tough. But afterwards, what it all came back to, and actually this, again, like I said, a decade's worth of work, was I had this desire to be heard. I had this really innate, at the core root of me, I just wanted people to listen to me. I wanted people to hear me when I spoke. And interestingly enough, it wasn't until I gave that up that people started listening. Because what it forced me to do was talk over people. I had to engage myself in whatever problem they were having. I wasn't able to sit back and listen. I wasn't able to actually have a conversation. It was always about me. So I would always be, creating an answer in my head. The moment someone opened their mouth, I'd have something. And that at the root of all of those issues came back to it. Even being in the military, you don't have much of a say. So when people tell you to do something, you're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, you just do it.
Which added to that issue later on, and so on and so forth. And that was the biggest one that I found, that I uncovered.
So transitioning from military to civilian life, what, as far as, obviously I've never experienced that, but I would imagine that's got to be super challenging. And so for the listeners listening to this that are looking to reinvent themselves in a new career or a life path, what advice would you give based on your own experience in that transition?
Understand that it's going to get worse before it gets better. No matter what, if as bad as you think you are right now, when you start the path to discovery, it's going to feel worse. It is, and it does, and it sucks. But that's how you get better at these things. So with any skill, you need to practice it, and you need to be able to practice it at times when you need it. Right. So I do jujitsu. I've been doing that for 7 years. I can practice a particular escape, let's say, or a particular attack or a submission. I can practice that a whole bunch of times and have people kind of go with it. Cool. But I'll never know if that works until it's tested against somebody who does not want that thing to happen. Right? Like if I'm trying to choke the life out of one of my friends, which is always a good time, they're not gonna let me do it just the way I want. I have to figure out how it's gonna work on that person in that role in the moment. But the only way I can do that is by testing it against them when they're fighting back. So when you're dealing with yourself, if you have an anger issue and you really want to hammer that in, like get control of it, well, now when you're angry, you have to have tools to use. So you got to be able to practice those tools ahead of time. And like, okay, I'm ready for the next time I get angry. I need to do this, 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 and this. And you're going to get angry and you're going to forget all of them. And then you're going to have to come back at the end of it and go, okay, that one's done. Next up. Next time, it's going to be this, 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 and this. And you're going to do that a bunch of times until you get to a point that I remembered to breathe when I was angry. Good. That's the win. But until that point, there's going to be a bunch of like, nope, 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 nope. And then you'll get one and you'll be like, yes, okay, I got it. And then you can slowly build on that and then slowly build on that. And it's going to take a while. So unfortunately, I guess I should say fortunately, because by doing these reps, you can then explain how it works to other people, which is, I think, in my mind, the best part of this is that the moment you get better, the moment you reinvent yourself and you strive for something great, like I want to be the best person I can be. Like that's a great aspiration to really go after. Once you can do that once and you can do it twice and you can do it 10 times and 15 times and whatever, then other people are going to look at you and go, man, how did you do that? And you're going to be able to say, well, let me tell you, it's going to be a bit of a trial, but worth it at the end of it. And I think that's the key of it. That's the crux of it all.
When you're really creating new ruts, new patterns, right? And when you say it's going to get worse before it gets better, you have to come to that moment of realization of what is true, and that's normally what we're avoiding. And it's an ugly truth that we really don't want to look at. And we subconscious, let's avoid that at all costs. Let's distract yourself with phones, with alcohol, with whatever. And when you have to stop all that and look at the truth, yeah, it does hurt. And what I'm hearing you say is it's just a matter of creating new paths, new patterns until you get that progress. And you cannot get the progress with a pill or immediate response. It takes time, energy, effort. And we talk about this a lot too, like leveling up, level up and live. That's our motto, It's not a fun process. Everyone says, "Oh, level up," let's level up, man. You don't know what you're saying when you're talking about leveling up. Like it's about to get difficult, but what's on the other side of that is life, right? You're living at that point. And then with hearing you describe that is just a beautiful confirmation. Well, the catalyst, that's kind of what I think about the most is what is the catalyst to get people to that moment where they can look at themselves and start that journey, right? Because they're just wallowing in despair, right? Or just the world of distraction, which is no life at all, until they come to that moment. So it's, to me, how can we shorten that to get them to say to themselves, this is where I am and this is where I need to go. And I'm not saying like I have it all figured out. I think we all will always have that, but it gets easier as you knock one thing off of you. This heavy weight you're carrying, the weight gets less and less, and you have experience of what it takes to get out of wherever you are. But yeah, what have you found? Have you seen any of those kind of catalysts that can help people maybe speed up or get them there?
The first one that always comes to mind is pain. You got to recognize how much pain you're in. That's the big one for me. Because like you said, you can distract yourself from pain pretty easily, right? You can take a pill literally to distract yourself from pain. You can, you can pick up your phone. Like it's so readily available to us. Just like, oh yeah. Okay. But my co-host Sean hits me with this all the time, is that whatever it is, it has to sting enough for you to move. Right. So if, let's say, actually, this is an interesting example. See if it floats with you guys as it does in my mind. You know those little fish that like eat away at your toes when there's like a foot bath, right?
Yep,
and they come up. There's like little minnows, and they eat all the dead skin off your feet, and
Yep.
it's all this magic. Like that's not going to get you to take your feet out of the water. Right? But if a friggin' bass or a friggin' pike comes up and it like chomps down on your toe, your feet's gonna move, right?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of where we're at with life, in that people are so distracted, and I mean with everything, just distracted with everything, that they're not taking their feet out of the water. That's it for somebody that has taken their feet out of the water and is looking at it from the outside, going like, "What are you doing? What are you like? Just they're bleeding, man. Your feet are bleeding. What is going on?" And there's people with like whole friggin' feet eating right off, and they're whatever, and just keep doing what they're doing because they don't want to face the fact that, oh my God, my foot's gone.
Yeah.
Right? They'll just continue to believe that, but that would be the biggest impetus is pain. The other one is, interestingly enough, change in general. So if there's a big change in life, somebody has a kid, right? That's going to make you reassess your priorities very quickly.
Yeah.
At least I hope it does. Let me put it that way. But those two, pain and change, are the two big ones that I've noticed over time, and pretty consistently, with basically everybody that I've talked to, especially, and I mean, I'm talking behavioral scientists, Green Berets, doctorates, like people, doctors in sports nutrition, and everybody in between, police and fire, like whatever. I've talked to hundreds of people now. Almost every single one of them says that their initial impetus to change was pain. They wanted to do something different. And then once they got that pain, either they went like, okay, game on. Let's go get some. Or no, I don't want to. So, yeah, I think number one, pain.
When we experience that pain, Chance, we all can resonate with that. I know our listeners probably can. I definitely can. I know Ewan can. And so we call it sick and tired of being sick and tired in these different areas of life. And so you're like, all right, well, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to continue to move the needle. I'm going to be 1% better than I was yesterday. I'm going to start asking myself the questions, doing the dark work. But then what do we all experience along the journey of embracing the suck? It's challenges, it's obstacles, it's setbacks. And so I'm curious, with these challenges, with these setbacks and these obstacles, when after you experience the pain, after experiencing, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's not if, but when you experience those challenges, what are some of the most powerful tools or strategies you've learned from others that anyone can use to overcome personal or professional obstacles, challenges, or setbacks?
That's a good one. I'd say the big. I'm going to give you my top one, and that is understanding how awesome you actually are. Like, friggin', when you stop and think about it, you are a single person on a planet of, what are we at, 8 billion now, something like that, right? But you have the capacity and have this. What you have done with your life so far is almost miraculous when you stop and think about it, because by ourselves as a human being, just left out in the wild, we're not that fantastic in terms of the animal kingdom, right? We can get eaten by a shark. You can get run over by a bull, like whatever it is. That we're not physical specimens in terms of fitness for the environment. But the fact that you've been able to survive and grow up. I mean, I imagine work, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're looking to better yourself in some way. And just those three facts put you ahead of a massive portion of the society across the board. And then on top of that, you start really diving into what you've done in life. What have you actually done with life? And, you've graduated high school. I'm going to go off on my own. I graduated high school. I joined the military. I served my country. I I became an advocate. I started serving my brothers. I started talking to interesting people. I started developing myself. I became a father. I became a husband. Like, I can start naming off things that I've done with my life that prove to myself I'm capable of doing whatever it is in front of me. And the harder the thing that you chose to do, the more proof there is. And I totally get it, where some people are going to be like, yeah, but I haven't done anything with my life. Explore that. Because if this is the very first challenge you've had in your life, well, congratulations.
I
Now
would
you
even
get
say
to do
that
it.
right there. I haven't done anything with my life is an indicator that they don't think they're awesome. And not to restate it, but it's a lack of self-love. I think it's conditioned in life. Like, okay, we
Yep.
try something, we fail, and we're like, you idiot. Look at just how we spoke to ourselves, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we get so frustrated, negative talk, and we doubt ourselves, and that's all forms of not thinking that we're awesome. I think it's just conditioned into society, like because we're afraid to perhaps be prideful or full of ourselves or arrogant. But that's not what self love and what you said, and I love it. Just that, hey, you're awesome. It's very difficult to say those words. I know for me, man, maybe even a year, 2 years ago, saying I'm awesome would be very, even now, it's a little hard for me to say, but I believe it, right? Because I hear the truth.
Mm-hmm.
To not feel that is a story I'm telling myself, right? But for most people, they don't see it. And if you don't love yourself, you will not treat yourself right. You'll not do the things that you need to do. And if you don't love yourself, how can you love others fully if you can't even love yourself? So what would be some of the, do you have any practical advice? Like, have you gone from you didn't think you were awesome to now that you do believe that, and what you're capable not of doing now that you believe that is infinite, right? What's some of the things you did to become able to say that to yourself without the arrogance and pride which people are afraid of? That's not what we're talking about here. I'm sure of it. Just talking to you
100%.
for this short period of time. Yeah, what would you say to that?
First one, therapy was the big one that helped me. I went and found it, and not just like I'm going to pick a therapist, because that's a journey in and of itself. So, like, because you got to find the right therapist, you got to find the right coach, you got to just like if you're struggling that bad. I heard a great quote was I think it was Jocko that was saying it, but he was saying, if you're so awesome right now, how come you're not winning? And then you got to take a look at yourself, like, how come I'm not winning? Okay, and that kind of gives you that little bit of view on yourself. But sometimes you can't do that for yourself in the moment, right? And that's why therapist, coach, somebody to help from the outside, going, hey man, look, if you want to be here, if you want to do this, you have to touch on this. You got to look at your foot and go, man, I lost one of my toes, right? that's part of the process. But trying to think of some other. So therapy, first one. Jiu-jitsu, that was another one. Something physically active, Muay Thai, wrestling, like I don't care. Go out and hit something.
Yeah.
It is one of the greatest experiences of my life has been martial arts, and especially jiu-jitsu now that I've kind of gotten out of it, because the journey mirrors life. And then buying into yourself it can be challenging. I mean, I used to think highly of myself in an egotistical way, and we kind of touched on that earlier, right? But that, like, it's not a portion of I'm better or more awesome than anyone else. It's just understanding that you're awesome, and it's true. Self-love is such a key aspect of this. And if you really truly love yourself, then you're going to want the best for yourself, which, the best food, the best feeling, the best relationships, that's what you want for yourself. Because I know for my loved ones, that's what I want for them. So really, if I loved myself, I should love me like them, and give myself all those same things. So, yeah, those would be the tools I'd say. Therapy,
I think it's
jiu-jitsu.
super important to talk about, because it's in all reality, if you were looking from outside, you're not awesome, and you're not awesome. It's whatever you believe you are, right? Because it's the belief pattern. And so if someone's not believing that, if they don't think they're worth it, they don't love themselves, they don't have that belief that they could do something awesome, or just are, they don't even have to go achieve. They're just awesome for being. If they don't have that, it's just the belief, it's just the pattern, right? And so they're having to change the belief. And when you're saying you're doing jiu-jitsu, that's when you get better at something, that progress, that physical activity alone,
100%.
the right chemicals moving in your body, and then having someone to talk to the therapist, even therapists have therapists. I think everybody should have a therapist in their life at some point, and cycle in and out. Perhaps it's just good to have that person to talk to. Yeah. So man, brilliant advice. Have someone to talk to. Get physical, and have something of work to get progressive at, because like you said, you can borrow from that, right? Like, hey, I'm getting better over here. And what you do in one area of life is you can do that in other areas of life also. So if I can get better here, where else can I get better? So then you start building self-belief, and then you can say to yourself, well, maybe I am awesome. No, the pattern has begun to change, begun to shift.
100%.
And that's what I hear from you, man. It's great advice.
Yeah. The interesting thing, I think Henry Ford said it, was whether believe you're right or you're wrong, or
you're right.
I can't remember the quote.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah, you're right. Either way.
Yeah.
If you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Either
That's
way.
right. 100%.
And I tell my boys this actually quite often. I was like, if you're gonna start a new pathway, like I'm up in Canada, right? It's north up here, and it's cold, and it gets snowy and all that stuff. There's a really nice layer of snow on the ground. When you try to build a path, when you're a path breaker, it sucks. Like, it's hard work. It builds a sweat up and so on and so forth. But every time you walk down that path, it gets easier every single time. And then you'll be like, oh, look, I think there might be a shorter way down that way. And you try to break a new path, guess what? It's going to suck. But every time it gets a little bit easier. I mean, you see it on pathways in grass too. Same thing, is that it takes a while. And you'll see a consistent pattern of everybody walking this way, and then the path will eventually be hewn into the grass itself. And I can't stress enough how important it is to just start on anything.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what it is. You want to start on yourself? Cool. You want to start on your mental health? Cool. You want to work on your physical health? Cool. You want to work on your nutrition? Whatever. Pick one thing. Go.
You'd mentioned horsemanship and jiu-jitsu earlier. And so shifting gears a little bit on balance and passion, between everything that you do, and it sounds like you are a busy guy, you're a father, husband, you've got between your podcast, veteran advocacy, and personal interest, that, you manage a lot of these passions. I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners are as well, how do you maintain balance and continuing to level up in personal growth in these areas while still staying focused on personal growth?
This one took me a while, and by no means am I a master at it. So I just want to preface this ahead of time. This is something that's still a work in progress. I think it's understanding that balance is not what we think it is. It's not a 50-50, everything gets the same amount all the time. What it really is understanding that what's important, first off, that's the big one. So, am I doing this because I love doing this? Or am I doing this because I feel I'm supposed to be doing this? Because those are two very different things, right? So, jiu-jitsu, I love doing. I train 6 days a week. I made time for that. That was a very important thing for me. My family, very important time, very important thing. Those things you start to realize that so much the balance is more like 70-30 for things like that, right? Where you need to understand, if you have so much on your plate that you're like, oh man, I just can't balance it all. Well, maybe you have too much. And so maybe it's time to start deleting things. Maybe it's time to really look at it and say, is this beneficial to me? Do I actually need this? What is it causing? So on and so forth. And that's the question that you have to continue to ask yourself while you're doing the thing, because it may not be serving you at this moment. It may actually, when I had to step away from the walk that I helped found, because it was such a massive chunk of my life, and I couldn't manage that time anymore, and it was draining from me rather than filling me up. And I said, okay, cool. Step away from that, be able to focus on something else. And that's really what balance is that it's more about deleting things, taking stuff off the plate than it is about trying to level them. And then the only other piece of that is, this is something I'm really working on, and it's hard to do. When you're in something, that is the balance, whatever that is. So if you're with your family, you are 100% with your family. Your mind's not on work. Your mind's not on jiu-jitsu. Your mind's not on other things. And like I said, I'm still working on this, but it's an amazing feeling when you can be 100% invested in what you're doing in the moment at the time.
I'm going to make a note to this. You know who Brendan Bouchard is, Chance?
No, I don't.
Okay. And highly recommend him. Anybody listening to this, he basically studies what he does for a living. He studies high performing individuals. And he's basically done all these studies, done all these interviews, and he's come down with these 6 habits in his book. And he has assessments. And so I've just immersed myself in his podcast, his books, and what he teaches and what he's learned from the interviewing of these high performing individuals, these extraordinary individuals, when he got their thoughts on habits, or I'm sorry, their thoughts on balance. And the difference is, the separator is, these individuals, it's not necessarily like, oh, I've got to balance all these different areas of life. The balance is, hey, these next 3 months, I'm going to be all in on training for a marathon, and making sure that he communicates that to the spouse, to the kids, to everybody around him. And so making sure that they have their support. And so this is a season of my life that I'm in. Hey, I'm going to be starting this business. For the first 6 months to 12 months, this is who I need to become. This is what I'm going to have to immerse my time, energy, and effort in for these next 12 months. Making sure that they're effectively communicating that, getting super clear on the direction that needs to go. But the balance is understanding this is and then you're over here in these different areas of life, maintaining. You're still doing those things, but you're present and focused with your kids, building the business, going on a vacation, whatever it may be in that season of life. Here recently, Ewan had asked me, is like, man, this is what I'm experiencing. And Ewan, I'm just sharing context. You can go deeper on this if you want. With our training, we both signed up for what's called a High Rocks competition in November 23rd. Nice. And so he's just been immersed in training in the morning time, in the afternoon time, going from 1 a day to 2 a days in training. And I told him, I said, one of the things that I've learned is this is a season of life that is important to you. This is the season. This is who you're wanting to become. Think about the individual that you're needing to become, the challenges that you're having to overcome, the obstacles of deleting and eliminating sugar, having the conversations and being intentional about with your kids and your wife, but also taking them in the journey with you. You're all in versus all consumed. And so what is balance, right? What does that mean? It's not just, everything's playing leaving field. No, you're in different chapters, different seasons, making sure you're taking the people around you, your spouses, your inner circle, your kids, and with you, and communicating that, hey, this is where I'm at in my seasons of life. And then making sure that you're maintaining and being intentional about these other areas of life and how you show up. That is what I've learned about balance.
Mm. Yeah, agreed. It's and you both said it, it's the quality of the time that you spend. It's not necessarily the amount. Like, you could balance the time, like you could divide it all up, 24 hours and 6 hours here, 6 hours there. It's got nothing to do with that, because if you're not present, then man, you're actually making it worse. You might as well not be there, because you're not there anyways. And speaking of Brendan Bouchard, I think I just listened to a chapter yesterday, and he talks about, well, this is two things that tie into that. Like, the transition time takes 20 minutes for you to transition from one task to another. Or if you're going from one thing to another, it can take 20 minutes. But so when you're just jumping from this to that immediately, you still have to transition, but you're not fully there. And that can cause all kinds of problems. Your wife starts talking to you. You went into a room and you're not listening. And then you're like, hey, what'd you say? And then you're like, and she thinks, oh, you're not listening to me. He's someone that doesn't listen to me. And then that habit can build, right? So being very aware of transition times is huge. And he talks about when he sees a door frame, he's trained himself. And I just heard that, this is the part I heard yesterday. When you go through the door, it's a trigger to think, when I walk into this room, I'm going, what can I do to make it the best room possible? How can I bring the most energy, the most awareness, the most presentness of that particular room? And whoever's in there, they're going to get the best of me. And how can I raise them up? And I love that. I think going forward for me, there's no doubt I can go through a door ever again without thinking, this is a trigger. Why would you not? Right? So, because my kids, my wife, top priority, but yes, I'm training a whole bunch. Medical equipment sales, building a business, a big Bible study that takes a lot of time. It's a lot on the plate, but I'm very present in the transition times and being aware. And Sean had told me this before I started reading the book, and he talks about release right before you transition. release, and it just triggers to get your mind right, so you can all show up the best way you want to be. Or the only other alternative is autopilot, and then who knows where that's going to go? You don't know,
Yep.
and that's where you get derailed. You go off course, and you wake up, and you're so far away from where you thought you would be, and that just happens over and over again. So yeah, I love to hear that's it.
Reps.
Whenever we
I
ask
like it.
people who are doing well and have gone through the fights and done the work, it's always kind of the same things that you hear. Like, you've got to do these things, or else it's just not going to work. There isn't any other options, you know. So yeah, I love to hear you say that.
It's reps, right? Reps. That's how you just got to get the reps in over and over and over again. And that's everything I've ever heard from every special operator that I've ever known, is that it's like reps. You do the reps. Just keep hammering into the reps over and over and over again. It doesn't matter what it is. Just keep going. And it was quite interesting. What you're describing in like stepping into a room and saying, how can I better this room? It's curiosity. It's just constantly being curious of like, oh, I wonder, and keeping that kind of mentality of being open to any new experience in any moment. And truly, I mean, there are Zen Buddhists that have spent their entire lives trying to find a mindfulness for a length of time. So anytime that you get a chance to be present in that moment, it's beautiful. And this is an interesting visual that I had while you guys were talking, was the fact that when you think about balance itself, I picture scales, right? The old school scales is that if you have a perfectly balanced scale, how much fun is that? Like, you're just flat, dead level. You're not really doing anything.
It's a great point.
If you're shifting weights around and left and right, you get ups and downs, and you get different times. You feel things. There's movement, and I think that's what I like to look at balance now, is that balance should have movement. It shouldn't be static. It should be being able to flow and move. And especially when I do jiu-jitsu, man, like, if I can find a really nice flow, that means my balance is just right exactly where it needs to be. And you can shift and glide and have people move underneath you, and you're not really experiencing any sort of like lag or drag or hindrance. It's a beautiful feeling. So yeah, I'm going to seek to have my life consistently moving. It's going to be good times.
One of the things that we talk about from 30,000 feet is, generically, it is, how do we live a better life every single day? Just being 1% better today, last week, and just being intentional about these key areas of our lives. And so one of the things that I get curious with, to what you're saying, Chance, is I ask myself, what are some key elements of self-improvement and personal growth that most people tend to overlook? And so one of the things that I've realized is that our emotions and our thoughts. And so we have thousands of thoughts per day. And one of the things that I've realized is an acronym that I like to use is called HALT, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I don't know who originated this, but it definitely wasn't me. And I know it's probably I've heard it from a podcast. But I asked myself when I walked through a room of what Ewan said from Brendan, is when I walk through a room, am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? When I get on a podcast, when I get on a phone call, when I'm in traffic, when I go to a meeting, I ask myself these things, and I start being self-aware of my emotions and my thoughts and how I'm feeling in that moment. And then I make sure I use breath work, kind of like what Ewan's saying is release. I release that. And so this is who I want to become. This is who I want to show up in this environment, whether I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I'm curious with you, what are the key elements of self-improvement or personal growth that you think most people tend to overlook? I think that's what it is when we show up in these different environments. A lot of people tend to overlook whether they're hangry, angry, lonely, or tired.
I agree with you. That's probably a big one. I think I would say measurement would be the thing that most people overlook, is that, hey, I want to be better. Okay. How? In what? What does that even mean? Better. To actually really, at the very basis of this, I got a really interesting image in my head when when you're talking was when I want to build something, right? I'm renovating my basement right now in the other room. When I want to build something, the first action that I have to take, not just the plan, but the action of building that room, is measuring something. That's the very first thing I have to do. How long is the wall? Oh, okay. Well, if the wall is this long, then I need to do X. But I think most people just jump over that step. That, like I want to be better. Okay, cool. I'm gonna work out and I'm gonna eat right and I'm just gonna do a bunch of stuff without any real plan, any real reasoning, any depths of discovery within their own heads. They just jump into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first. And I say this from experience because I did that for a very long time.
I think we all do that.
Yeah, I think we do.
At some
and,
point.
Yeah, and I think I would honestly say the last 2 years was when it really kind of kicked into my head. Like, you need to actually write something down. And it spurred from my co-host, Sean. He hit me up and he was like, what's your why? What is your, why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? What, like, seriously, why? And I couldn't come up with an answer. And he was like, okay, well, come back to me. And he had me sit down at the table with a piece of paper and a pen and write why ? And then not get up from the table until that was filled out. And that's how I was able to come up with the fact that I'm a facilitator. That's exactly what it was. That's the enjoyment that I get when I see, like, when I teach somebody and they get a concept and you, like, not just listening, but you can see that they get it and they go, oh, that aha moment for me is like gold. I'm just, it's amazing. Yeah. But I had to really sit down and figure that out. I had to think about it deeply for, I think I was at the table for like 4 or 5 hours. Did not get up. Once you have that, then everything comes off of that. So, that I can't state that enough, how important that is to do, because now that I know that I'm a facilitator, I can be the best facilitator possible. I can level up my speech. I can level up my vocabulary. I can level up how I do the show. I was talking about the lighting and the studio and all this other, when we first started talking, it's a process, right? I'm going to try this light. Not bad. Okay, now I'm going to try this light. Not bad. And just continually build upon it. But it starts from why. Why am I doing it to begin with?
I really love that you put, we talk about why a lot, but I love that you put the word to it. That, like, you just have that it's like a stamp, like a name of a facilitator. It kind of generates more of a what to do next then, right? What does a facilitator do? I imagine myself the best facilitator I could possibly ever be. What is a good, and then I think about, what does he do? All right, well, he'd be doing these things. It really helps put that name on that. And I've never heard that before. And I really like that, man. I'm going to do that work myself and put a name on it. I'm thinking, like, for me, myself, if it was just to call something like a bridge, like I want to be a bridge for people. And when I think about that, like, what do bridges do? What does a bridge builder do? And so, yeah, you sparked that for me, man. So I'm very grateful. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure, man. It helped me in leaps and bounds. One of the things I tell people about, when I first went to therapy, I had a really bad therapist. Like, him and I just did not link up well. And I was with him for a year. And every time I left that office, I was worse than when I went in. And it wasn't until that I said, no, okay, wait. Actually, it was a friend of mine that came up to me and said, I was like, hey man, how's everything going? And I'm like, not well, blah, blah, blah. We got into this whole conversation and he was like, oh dude, you can just, why don't you go see somebody else? I'm like, well, this is who I got sent to. Like, the Army, when I got out, they were like, this is the recommendation of place you go. So I just went there. And then he was like, oh no, dude, you can go see whoever you want. Like, go. And I was like, oh sweet. So I went and did that. But the biggest leap I had from my therapist that I have now, that I have had for the last 8 years, was she challenged me. And then it wasn't until Sean challenged me with my why to write it down that was that next major leap. And then And I think this is where, at least for myself, and perhaps for you guys, if you resonate with this, is that those moments when you get really straight up challenged, there is a wall in your face. You can't go around, you can't go under, you can't turn around. It's right there. You have to go through it. Those are the ones that those are the massive changes. Those like open your eyes to, oh my goodness. I was like, all of a sudden you can see the horizon again and you're like, oh, sweet. And you can start going. But yeah, I've tattooed on my wrist, the obstacle is the way. And that's what it is. And one of the things I did when I was in the military was be a breacher, where we, blow down doors and shotgun down your hinges and things like that. And that's the concept. You need a hole. The obstacle is the way. Let's hammer it out. So
yeah. Awesome, Chance. Well, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor to have you on the show today. We really appreciate your time, energy, and effort. Appreciate you saying yes to the Level Up Live podcast. I know our community has received tons of insight and experiences and value today, so we really greatly appreciate you, brother. We got 2 questions, 2 final ones for you. First, how can our listeners and audience and community support you, man?
That one easy enough. Watch the collective, get better. That's the big one. Where you can find that is we're on YouTube, Spotify, whatever you get your podcasts, you name it. But the biggest, easiest way to get a hold of us is on the Instagram at _collective_IG. Or you can hit me up, Chance_Burles on Instagram. I got all the stuff on there as well. And those are my 2 main things, but we're on everywhere. I mean, whatever social media platform it is, I'm pretty sure we have some sort of presence there. That's a lot of work keeping up with social media, but yeah, hit us on Instagram. That has all links to everything else. We got the website as well, the-collective.ca. And yeah, come on over, listen to a couple conversations, ask questions. It's a live show, so you can hit us up during the show while listening to the guests. That's the whole reason we have it as live, so that people can interact and engage. It's wonderful, man. I just love it. And the more people we get on the collective, the more people get better. That's better for me.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes as well for easy access for our listeners as well. Second question, final question. What does level up and live mean to you?
That's a big question. So, level up and live. I would say that this is interesting. I don't know if you guys play Dungeons and Dragons or if you ever played RPGs as a kid, something like that. But when you level up in a game, you get to put skill points into your character, and you only have a set amount of skill points. So again, you have to be able to be strategic on where you put your skills. Who do you want to be? What kind of person or fighter or magician or whatever you want to be in the game itself? You have to put those skills in the places that you want, which means that you need to think about where they're going to go. So I think level up and live is to level up, put your skill points where they need to go, and live it, man.
That's cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah, love that, man. Super cool.
Thanks again, Chance. Level up and live, man.
Appreciate you, Chance.
My pleasure.
Level up and live.